You're listening to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast, the only podcast for active, athletic, and adventurous women and those who aspire to be. We've got your back as you navigate the ups and the downs of motherhood, midlife, and menopause. I'm your host, Allison Hylett, here to remind you that female isn't fragile. I'm a strength, conditioning, and nutrition coach who's trained hundreds of women to achieve their goals to get fit, lift heavy, go the distance, and feel like a badass in every area of their lives. Each week, you'll hear from me and some of our awesome guests as we educate and empower you during each stage of your fitness journey, whether you're already crushing it, fighting to get back out there, or starting from day one. So friends, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast. Today, we're talking about navigating body image in the digital age. It seems like with each passing year, there are more and more challenges and obstacles in the way of adopting a more body neutral or body positive approach to ourselves. Between social media, celebrity culture, and now with the prevalent discussion of weight loss drugs in our society, it feels like there's always some new standard we're not meeting, always some reason to not feel good enough or to feel uncomfortable in our own skin. And I don't know about you, but often what's offered in response to the unrealistic cultural messaging is around affirmations of just love yourself. And that isn't enough for me personally to move the needle. So I wanted to sit down with a research scientist to find out what the science says about shifting our body image toward a more positive perspective. With me today to do just that is Dr. Charlotte Markey, a body image scientist who has studied body image and eating behaviors for nearly 3 decades. She is passionate about understanding how to help people have a healthy relationship with their bodies and food. Dr. Markey is a psychology professor at Rutgers University and a research scientist who has published over 100 scholarly articles and chapters about health issues. She is also an author, having most recently published the Body Image book series for girls, for boys, and for life. And she is a wealth of knowledge and gives so much practical advice in this conversation. And I am so excited to share this important episode with you today. So let's get into it. Welcome, Dr. Markey. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
A few months ago, one of your posts from your Substack Body Talk popped up on my feed, a post about the difference between body positivity and body neutrality. But what made me track you down was that it's written from the perspective of a research scientist and a psychologist who has been studying body image for decades. And this is really significant to me because I often find that the body image guidance is just love yourself and all of those types of fluffy affirmations that are thrown around. And as a human who's had periods of pretty terrible body image, and as a coach who works with many women who are also themselves going through periods of negative body image, much of the advice I see out there lacks any real, concrete, evidence-based, actionable steps for people to actually improve their body image over time. So when I read your article, I was like, I need to have you on the show. So here you are.
Yes. Well, I agree. This is a criticism of the body positivity movement, is that it seems a little trite or like just accept yourself, love yourself is oversimplifying the real life experience that most of us have. From my perspective, when I talk about positive body image, I'm talking about something that's much more complicated, much more nuanced than just love your body. Although it would be great if we all just loved our body and it was that simple,
For real.
but it's just not.
It's not. There's just so many influences. And whenever you come to this place where you're like, I want to accept myself, I want to love myself, there's just so many external factors that are making that very challenging. So you're here today to talk with us about navigating the body image challenges that we face in today's world. So there are some new challenges and new trends. So I think it's always great to start with some definitions so that we can have some context. What is body image? What does it mean?
Body image is sometimes defined as how we think and feel about our body. I think that this is a narrow and insufficient definition. I like to think of it more in terms of how comfortable are we in our own skin. So it's not just an appearance-based construct. It really has much more to do with our sense of identity, our sense of self. We know from the research literature from decades now that body image is associated with our social experiences. So if you're confident, you feel good, you're approaching social relationships in a different way. We also know it's really, really highly linked to health behaviors. If you are feeling good about yourself, then you're often treating yourself better. You're engaging in healthier activity and eating patterns. And body image is really linked with mental health in general. So, not just eating disorders, which of course it is associated with, but also depression, anxiety, even substance use disorders are linked with body dissatisfaction. So, how comfortable are you in your own skin? How are you perceiving yourself in almost the broadest sense?
We hear this term body positivity. And the article that you posted on your Substack was really about the difference between positive body image and neutrality, and how it can feel like a bridge too far for some people to get to positive body image, and that there's this kind of path through this neutral approach. So can you talk us through the nuance there?
Absolutely. I want to say first that some body image researchers would conceptualize this slightly differently, but I think we all agree that whether you are aiming for a sense of body neutrality or a sense of body positivity, that both of those things are multifaceted and encompass
Mhm.
self respect, self compassion, self care, trying to take good care of your body and yourself. I would say that body neutrality focuses less on appearance. And this can be really important when we are dealing with people who are recovering from an eating disorder, for example. And maybe body dissatisfaction was driving some of that disordered eating behavior. And getting people to shift their mindset so they're thinking just less about appearance, where that is not
Mm.
really the goal anymore. So a more neutral approach to the appearance related issues is a more body neutral approach. But what body positivity adds to that is some sense of joy in your body, the ability to feel some more positive affects surrounding the body. And so these are not like mutually exclusive. It's not like you have to pick one or the other, really. I think for some people, it makes sense. It feels like too high of a goal to say, I want to feel positive. And so just not feeling negative is a great start.
Mm.
But I also, as a psychologist, always say, I want people to ultimately aim for some positive experiences in their bodies
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like when we talk about the difference between depression and happiness. Certainly, I want people to not be depressed and maybe experience a sense of contentment, but ideally, they'd feel happy sometimes. And I
Mm.
think that's an important analogy because no one feels happy all the time. No one feels positive about their bodies all the time. No one has just positive affect all the time. That would be some indication there was something wrong with you because you should respond to your environment and the world around you. Sometimes you should
Mhm.
not be happy. Sometimes you probably shouldn't feel good about your body. If you're sick, you don't have to
Mhm.
be like really excited about what your body's doing. I think that's one of the sort of misunderstandings about body positivity is this sense that if you reach that goal, you're just jumping out of bed in the morning and every morning you're like, I love myself, I love my body, I love life. And again, that's just not really what we mean.
In my own personal journey, my own personal experience, the neutrality piece was easier to get to. Moving away from focusing on the aesthetic of your body and focusing more on kind of these moments of positive or neutral body awareness, using my body and existing in my body in a way that when there were moments where I felt good in my body, just noticing that not necessarily tied to how it looks, but how does it feel when I would go for a run and I feel amazing at the end of it, or I would go lift and I feel really strong at the end of it, and grabbing those little nuggets, those little moments in time where I was having a positive experience in my body that wasn't tied to the aesthetics of my body.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an important body image improvement strategy, no matter where you're at, is to think a lot more about functionality. What is your body doing for you? And how do you have to take care of it so it can keep doing those things? And I think
Mhm.
so many of us were brought up hearing cultural messages that we should deprive our bodies, essentially, that was morally superior. It was a sign of like strength to be depriving ourselves, essentially, whether it be of nutrients or rest or fun, enjoyment. And so when we think about a more neutral or positive approach to body image, it's so important to think about, well, yeah, how do I just take care of this body? This is my physical home, essentially. And how do I notice the good things? And instead of trying to deprive yourself of whether it be a meal or a nap or whatever, tell yourself, no, my body needs a day off or my body needs a snack. I'm hungry. On one hand, I know so basic, and on the other hand, also completely the opposite of how many people, especially women, grew up thinking about their bodies.
Yeah, and I think a lot of women do some of this without even noticing that they're doing it. It becomes like an autopilot after years of reinforcement. And as a coach and as somebody who's gone through therapy, it can be really helpful when you're having trouble breaking through that to have somebody there who is reflecting that back to you, a trusted person or somebody who can help you reflect and probe into that so that you can start to see how your thoughts are flying under the radar, but they're driving your behaviors. And that's perpetuating this body image issue that you're experiencing.
Absolutely. And I find sometimes to just helping people to spend less time in what we call body surveillance or looking and being critical of their bodies is so important. And I think sometimes we don't notice how much we do that, even just little things like a quick check in the mirror before you leave the house, but just not worrying about all the specifics because no one cares. No one who you
Right.
should care about should really care. So
Yep.
it's just a different kind of mindset than what is typically reinforced because there's a whole
Right.
beauty and fitness and wellness industry that makes money literally when we feel insecure
Mhm.
about ourselves. So we have to push back against that for the sake of our both mental and physical health.
Absolutely. What are some of the biggest influences that we see now to our body image?
Well, no one comes into this world hating their bodies, right? So we know it's
Yeah.
not innate. It's very much learned. And we know some of it is learned in family settings. Unfortunately, there's real evidence at this point of an intergenerational transmission of these concerns, whether it be from mothers to daughters, or we have evidence suggesting that fathers are influential, mothers are influential, it can be grandparents even, making comments, restricting foods, a variety of behaviors and conversations that may occur even very early in life for people may make them feel self-conscious and very aware that they should be trying to control their bodies or change it in some way. And this sort of pervasive message, again, that may start in the family setting is very rarely, you're great the way you are. There's always,
Mhm.
or oftentimes, a layer of, I love you, but, and then this only becomes reinforced typically in peer groups at school as when we're young.
Mhm.
Kids who are more attractive, who are thinner, who have certain physiques are often more popular. So we learn from a young age that there's social status associated with a lot of this. It's not a perfect correlation, but it's there. And then the larger cultural messaging is pretty consistent that how we look is important, if not one of the most important things about us. And like I said, there's a number of industries that cater and really contribute to this messaging in terms of all the things that we can do to ourselves. So there's just layers and layers of different sociocultural influences, and very few of them are frankly positive influences.
I was looking back when all of the women's health and fitness magazines were clearly about thinness and 1,200 calorie diets. And it was all about thinner thighs. And things are starting to change a little bit, but there's still so far to go. There's still so many influences. And as humans, we're really wired to care what other humans think about us. And I feel like industries that have decided that, hey, you hate your body, that's great. I can sell you something to make you feel better about your body, but it never does. It's always to change your body. And whenever we can't make it work, we feel like a failure. And it just perpetuates it and makes it feel like it's just will not be any different than this.
Yeah, thanks for raising that because I think it's really important to clarify that this messaging and these products, they are not offering useful solutions typically. There are things we can and maybe even you would go as far as to say we should do to try to take care of ourselves. Like you should try to get plenty of sleep and you are likely to feel better if you are eating foods that are nutrient dense at least some of the times. There are some things, of course, that we can do, but it's just not that simple. And most of the wellness hacks are truly nothing but hacks. Most
Mhm.
people don't need protein powder. You're not going to feel better taking a whole bunch of supplements. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. Most of it's just unfortunately really dishonest in terms of what actually will
Yeah.
benefit your body image.
Agreed. Agreed. Because at the end of the day, it's still coming back to you will feel better about your body if you change the way that you look. And that's not the solution, because bodies will change throughout lifetime. And not all about our body, the way that it looks, is under our control. There's a lot of other things that we don't have a direct impact on. So by saying to somebody that the way to better body image is to look better or to change the aesthetic of your body, you're missing the point. The whole point is to move away from basing so much of your worth on how you look and more on yourself as a whole.
Yes, I couldn't agree more because, as you say, our bodies are going to keep changing. And in other words, the goalposts are going to keep moving. So even if you achieve some whatever trend it is today, the beauty industry will come up with another trend. In that regard, the goalpost is moving. But also, your body is going to keep changing because every single day we are aging and changing. So it's like kind of a race you can't win. This is like this beauty contest that no one wins unless, I don't know, you get a ton of cosmetic surgery and die young. I mean, I don't know. That's the only way to to beat the game. And I don't have the money or the time for a ton of cosmetic surgery. I guess I don't want people to value me just for how I look. And I don't want to die young, so I'm going to keep aging. And there's some acceptance that has to be a part of how we deal with body image issues. There's no other way, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective. I teach college students, and when we talk about this, college students are often like, oh my God, this is so depressing. And I often try to suggest to them, like, well, maybe it's depressing, or maybe you could just feel relieved. Right? What if you just reframed it? This is a huge relief. You don't have to try to achieve these ideals that you're not going to achieve anyways.
Yeah, because it's hard to keep up when I feel like every time I look at the internet, there's a new name for some shape or look of a body part that I should or should not have. Like the thigh gap was a thing for a while. And I'm like, we're just inventing things that we're supposed to have. And this is not something that ever crossed my mind at any point until someone said thigh gap. To your point, you won't win. You will never get ahead of the next thing that's saying, now you need to be this way, and now you need to be this way, and now you need to be this way. So just take the expectations off and allow yourself to be relieved of those obligations to look any specific way for other people.
And I think so many of us do feel some sense of obligation, or that people have expectations, and it can be so preoccupying. It can take up so much mental space. It can take up so much of our time and energy. And I think when you lower the standard for yourself, there is a lot of relief in that. And it frees you up, frankly, to think about other stuff, to talk about other stuff. In my latest book, I include a little section on how much of our appearance and frankly, our personality, everything about us is very heavily genetically influenced. If you think about it in terms of height, it's about 90% of our height is just due to our biological parents' height. And weight does vary somewhat more, but it is, depending on the study you look at, is about 50 to 80% attributable to genetic influences. Think about your shoe size. Do you have the same size foot or close to it as one of your parents? If your parent has really big feet, odds are you're not going to have really small feet. This is genetics. If they both have blue eyes, you're probably going to have blue eyes. That's the way that works. And so there's a lot we can't fight. It's just who we are. So we can be glad about that. You can figure out how you want to enhance your appearance in ways that work for you, that are not a depletion of your resources, financial, time, energy, resources, and then carry on.
Yeah, because thinking that I don't look a certain way, I am the problem. No, the standards are the problem, and they are constantly changing, and you will never, ever, ever meet them. And this is a system that's designed to work against you because there are industries behind it fueling the perpetuation of these standards and the invention of new ones to keep you spending money and to keep you preoccupied with always trying to change your appearance. So remembering, if you come back to this space of it's me, it's my genetics, this is who I am, this is me as an individual. And that's not the issue here. The issue is that I'm being subjected to these standards that I have no say in whatsoever.
It's a rigged system, essentially.
Totally. Hey, you. I wanted to press pause on this episode for a second to talk about your fitness goals. You know, those sweet dreams of being more active and feeling athletic and confident and doing epic, adventurous shit. Or maybe you just feel like you're getting older, because we're all getting older. And you, like me, never want to give up on carrying all the groceries into the house in one shot, or picking up that heavy Amazon box without worrying that you're going to throw your back out. I know you're busy. You're probably listening to this episode while multitasking. Oh yeah, I'm on to you. And the biggest thing that's stopping you from getting strong and fit is knowing how to use your workout time most effectively. Like exactly which exercises are worth your time, when to do them, and the number of sets and reps to get to your goals. You probably also tried other fitness apps and programs out there, only to feel like they weren't right for your needs. You want a program that has it all: strength, power, cardio, mobility, and recovery, all built right in without spending your whole life in the gym. And you want experienced coaches around to answer your questions and a community at your back to help you stay motivated and inspired. Look, I've been coaching women for a long time now, and the truth is that you don't need another fad diet or complicated, time-consuming workout routine to support you as you age. You just need to train smarter with simple, progressive workouts and a plan that's designed for your body and your life, whether you're navigating motherhood, midlife, or menopause. And if this sounds like exactly what you've been missing, I invite you to join Stronger 365, a progressive strength, power, and conditioning training membership for women like you who are ready to stop winging it and take their training to the next level with more structure and support. And the best part? This program has 3 different options, so you can choose your own fitness adventure based on your goals, how much time you have to train, and what equipment you have, whether you've got access to a full gym or, like me, work out at home. And it's run by me, Allison Heilig, and my awesome team at Miles to Go Athletics. Head over to the show notes for all the details and to join our membership community. And as an FBG, your first 2 weeks are on me. And now, let's get back to the episode. So the million-dollar question: what does the research tell us about effective ways to improve or support body image in ourselves?
So I already mentioned body functionality, which is an important way to reframe and refocus how we think about our bodies, think about functionality. There's some pretty compelling evidence when it comes to gratitude. This always sounds, I know, a little bit pop psychish, but there is research supporting focus on what you like, focus on being grateful. This improves mood in general. If you're thinking of it in terms of what you like about your life, it improves life satisfaction. If you're thinking about it in terms of your appearance, it improves appearance satisfaction. So really getting in the habit of being less self-critical and more grateful for what you like is important. How we think about food and fitness is really important. And I like to say, think about them in terms of self-care. How you feed yourself is how you take care of yourself. How active you are is another way to take care of yourself. Don't think of these things as opportunities for self-punishment.
Okay.
Think about it like, I'm going to nourish myself so that I feel good today, so that I can function at work, so that I can take care of my kids, so that I can do what's important for me in this world. And the same thing with activity. Some people love being physically active, some people don't. And I like to think most people can find some way to be active that's, we know, good for physical health. There's evidence it's also good for mental health. But if you're doing some kind of activity just as a way of punishing yourself or out of some sense of obligation, then you're already cutting into any of the mental health benefits. So find something else and be creative. Maybe it's working in your garden. Maybe you like to scrub your floors. Everyone has their things that brings them a sense of satisfaction. For me, it's always been very social. I like to go on a walk with a friend. I like to go on a run with a friend. I don't typically exercise alone. And so for me, I like being active, but I like it as a social opportunity too. What makes it feel good for me. But framing those things in a more adaptive way is really important. And we also have good evidence that when people push back against this cultural messaging or don't buy into it, and this is very true when we're thinking about social media and media in particular.
Mm-hmm.
We know that media influences can be really damaging to our sense of self and our body image. Social media allows us via the algorithms to fall into a rabbit hole if we let ourselves. And I offer this advice to young people, but I don't think it's irrelevant to those of us who are older than young people, whatever age you are. If you are going to spend an hour a day scrolling around on your phone, which is probably, frankly, an underestimate of what most of us are actually doing,
Yes.
you can make those online spaces work for you by unfollowing things, not looking at things that are going to make you feel bad. We know celebrity culture in general is usually not a morale boost. And instead, there are mental health influencers. There are body positivity focused accounts that may really make you think about these issues differently. So I think it's important to protect ourselves in those online spaces because a part of all of our days, or many of our days, whether we are glad about that or not. It seems to be the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Your physical environment has huge influence over how you feel about yourself, what behaviors you have. Think about when you hang out with your friends who are really positive, you have more of a positive experience. But your digital environment is not any different than your physical environment. I think it's just an extension. It's like this place that we don't really think of as being an environment that we exist in, but we are. We are consuming, we are being stimulated by, we're being influenced by the things that we're looking at, the podcasts that we listen to, the television shows, the social media, people that we follow, not even people we follow anymore, right? Because now social media is showing you lots of other things, not just who you
Right,
follow.
right.
So it becomes even more difficult for you to curate your digital environment. But I think just to your point, being more aware of the types of things that are in that digital environment and curating them as necessary to make sure that if you are spending your time in that space, that it's at least with the more positive people and not with the people that are making you feel terrible about yourself.
Absolutely. And more power to you if you can also get better at restricting your access to some of that social media. I personally am not great at it, but I do find, and the research suggests that when we spend less time on our phones, that's usually better for our mental health, frankly. So
Mm.
engage in real world conversations and spend less time scrolling. That's
Yeah.
extra if you want to be an all-star. Like, don't
Yeah.
just make it a healthier
Yeah.
space. Just avoid it. Avoid it sometimes.
Yes. Avoidance can be a good coping strategy. Yeah. So, on to a newer trend, and this is an evolving area of research from what I understand from your work, the prevalence of weight loss drugs. How is that having an impact on body image?
I'm so fascinated by this as someone who's studied body image for so long now because our bodies are viewed in a cultural context. When the culture changes, sometimes our views change. And
Mhm.
I think part of what's happening with the introduction of these drugs and the increasing, not just discussion about them, but advertising for them, and what they suggest to a lot of people is that our bodies are more malleable than they are. Right. A lot of people, frankly, I know in my orbit would say, even if I wanted them, I can't afford them. This is a non starter. So it's not even about necessarily taking the drugs. It's more about the cultural messaging that, hey,
Mhm.
never mind what we were saying, that whole body positivity thing about accepting yourself. You don't have to do that anymore. Here's a drug you can take and your body will change. And there you go. Then you'll be happy. Right. I feel like that's the way the messaging's evolving. And yet, as far as I know, the only research actually looking at body image and interest in these drugs is the research I've just been doing in my own lab at Rutgers. And so we don't actually have evidence that these drugs would improve anyone's body image, right? We have evidence that they may induce weight loss. Most of those studies are pretty short term when it comes to drug studies. So we have data for
Mhm.
4 years at this point, is as far as I'm aware, the longest trial that's been done. We see some drop off in terms of weight loss. So we do see weight loss in the literature for the first probably even couple of years, but it does plateau, it does drop off. You don't just keep
Mhm.
losing weight, but in order to maintain that weight loss, people have to keep taking the medication. And the likelihood that people will keep taking the medication is actually pretty low. So one study I was just reading, God, I think it was this week, even suggested that after a few years, the vast majority of people stop taking the medication because of the side effects. I think some of this messaging has really oversimplified how this is going to play out for the average person. The average person actually can't afford these drugs. But for people who can or are believed to be at health risk and might get insurance coverage for that reason. And it's important to note, too, that these drugs have been used longer to treat diabetes. The efficacy in terms of treatment for diabetes is, I think, clearer. The dosing for diabetes treatment is literally half the dosing prescribed for weight loss. And so this is part of why we don't see the same side effects or the same issues of intolerance of the drugs because
Mhm.
the dosing is much lower. I think we need more research. We need more research that's not just
Mhm.
medical drug trial research. We need more psychosocial research and we need longer term research. So I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot we don't know still. And I think we have to
Yeah.
be skeptical the way that a lot of diets have been marketed historically as this panacea. Like you go on whatever it used to be, the Atkins diet, and you're going to lose weight. You're going to get a raise at work. You're going to get like a new boyfriend, right? We call it the myth of transformation in this field. Your whole life will be better. And now we see a lot of that same sort of messaging surrounding these drugs. And just as it was not true for dieting, because most diets are not sustainable and not effective in the long run, it's not clear to me yet that these drugs are going to produce sustained weight loss for people, and that that's going to impact their mental health in the ways that the marketing suggests it will. I think we have to still be careful and approach all of this with a lot of skepticism and appreciation that the research is still evolving. We will know more in a year. We'll know more in 5 years. And for some people, these may be very useful, even outside of diabetes treatment. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, they're terrible for everyone. I don't think we know really yet.
Yeah, and there's always a risk-reward assessment that has to be made when you take any drug, right? There's side effects to my anti-anxiety, antidepressant meds, but they are worth the trade-off that I'm getting in my quality of life. But we don't understand that well enough to be making that determination just yet in some cases for some conditions. It's still such a new and evolving thing.
Yeah. And that's like the holy grail, right? This idea that you could take a medication and you wouldn't have to do anything else and you would end up losing weight. So of course, I totally am sympathetic and understand the enthusiasm for them. They've transformed the economy in the Netherlands. I do understand where all of that's coming from. And yet, I think if you don't have a real medical need and that risk benefit kind of ratio is unclear, I would personally probably hold off at this point. It's of course the case that for some people, the risk benefit ratio may look really different.
Yet my personal experience is that even when I lost weight, it didn't improve my body image.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's very similar to a disordered eating mentality where sometimes people fall into really maladaptive and disordered eating habits, and they do lose weight. And they may be as thin as they ever thought they wanted to be, but they are not satisfied. They want to keep losing weight. And we see this with cosmetic surgery. We see it with weight loss. That a lot of times as people change themselves physically, they don't all of a sudden stop and say, okay, I'm good now. Now I'm happy. Right? It's like there's always more to do. There's always more weight to lose. There's always something else you can fix. There's always going to be some new invention of something you should do. I have a teenage daughter, and I'm surprised because she's more in touch with popular culture than I am at some of the beauty rituals or products or things that I don't even think about. It never even occurred to me, the possibility of like fake eyelashes. But that's a thing now that a lot of people are very into. And my eyelashes, I'm sure, would look better with them, but where do you stop? And I think that's a very personal decision, really. I think everyone should feel autonomy over their bodies. And if you want to wear fake eyelashes, go for it. I really think we have to balance some skepticism and balance some recommendations with acknowledgement that people have autonomy over their own bodies and should do with them what they wish. And yet, like you said, there are trade-offs.
Yeah, but from an empowered, informed place, too. This obligation that we feel as women to show up in the world as pretty is sometimes driving these behaviors, as opposed to, I want my hair color to be red, or I want to do my nails. There's a different feel to it in my experience where I feel like I have to, or I should be doing these things versus this is what I want to do.
Yeah, and we talk about this in the body image world as like an adaptive appearance investment versus maladaptive. We all make some investments in our appearance for the most part. There are very few of us who don't, because this overlaps with hygiene and you're going to wash your hair or whatever. The world we live in, and there's nothing wrong with it. We want people washing their hair. Some people are going to style it. Some people aren't. Some people are going to spend time on it. Some people aren't. So what's adaptive for one person may not be adaptive for another. But the more risk that is involved in these investments, whether it be financial risk or health risk or whatever other kind of risk you can imagine, the greater the odds that it's a maladaptive investment, frankly.
That's a really key distinction. That's like the mic drop moment of the podcast right there. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and expertise with us. This was really, really helpful. So people can find your books at thebodyimagebook.com. We'll link to those in the show notes so people can find them easily. And people can also find and follow you on your website, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Substack. You're all over the place. My goodness. We'll link to all of those in the show notes as well so people can find you easily. Dr. Markey, thank you so much. This was really great. Thank you for being here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk with you about all of this.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. But don't worry, we're dropping new episodes every Thursday. In the meantime, head over to the show notes for all the links from today's episode, or go to fitbottomedgirls.com/podcast to catch up on past episodes. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.